Welcome to our journey through time, as we unravel the saga of how Islam colonized the vast lands of India and Africa. From the deserts of Arabia to the lush landscapes of the Indian subcontinent and the diverse terrains of Africa, follow us as we explore the rise of Islamic empires, the fates of kingdoms, and the indelible marks left on cultures and civilizations. Islam's expansion beyond the Arabian Peninsula marked the beginning of a new era in history. Through conquests, trade, and conversion, Islamic states and empires established themselves as dominant powers, weaving a complex tapestry of influence over India and Africa. The Islamic incursion into the Indian subcontinent, beginning with the Ghurid invasions in the late 12th century, marked a profound shift in the region's socio-political and cultural landscape. The establishment of the Delhi Sultanate and the subsequent rise of the Mughal Empire not only altered the administrative framework but also introduced a period of religious and cultural tumult, characterized by forced conversions, slavery, and the systematic erosion of Hindu and Buddhist traditions. The timeline of Islamic conquests in India is marked by several key phases. 1192 to 1526, the period of the Delhi Sultanate, beginning with the Ghurid victory at the Battle of Tarain, which laid the foundation for successive Islamic dynasties ruling from Delhi. 1526 to 1857, the Mughal Empire, founded by Babur after his victory at the Battle of Panipat, represented the zenith of Islamic rule in India, bringing much of the subcontinent under a centralized administration. Throughout these periods, the Islamic empires expanded their territories, often through brutal military campaigns against the indigenous states, leading to a profound transformation of the Indian socio-political landscape. Forced conversion was a notable aspect of the Islamic conquests in India. While the extent and intensity varied across different rulers and periods, there were numerous instances where Hindu and Buddhist populations were compelled to adopt Islam, often under the threat of violence or as a condition for survival. Notable among these were the campaigns led by rulers like Mahmud of Ghazni, and later, during the reign of Aurangzeb, where temple destruction and the imposition of jizya, a tax on non-Muslims, pressured many to convert. Slavery became a grim reality of the conquests, with countless Indians enslaved during the numerous military campaigns across the subcontinent. Slaves were often taken from the captured towns and cities, with women and children being particularly vulnerable. These individuals were employed in various capacities within the Islamic realms, from labor in the construction of monumental architecture like the Qutub Minar to service in the harems and households of the Muslim elite. The Islamic rulers' attempts to establish and legitimize their dominion often led to the targeted destruction of Hindu and Buddhist temples, libraries, and learning centers, which were seen as the bedrock of the indigenous cultural identity. Towns and cities such as Varanasi, Mathura, and the ancient Nalanda University suffered significant losses, with their religious centers desecrated or repurposed for Islamic use. The Islamic conquests systematically dismantled the fabric of existing Indian empires and kingdoms. The once powerful Rajput kingdoms, the Gupta Empire, and other regional powers were either subdued into vassalage or completely overrun. The establishment of the Delhi Sultanate served as a base for further expansion and consolidation of Islamic rule, leading to a gradual but irreversible shift in the power dynamics of the region. The Arabs and later, the Persianized Turks who led the Islamic conquests often harbored racial prejudices against the Indians, viewing them as culturally and religiously inferior. This sense of superiority was not only reflected in the disdainful treatment of the local populations, but also institutionalized through various policies that marginalized the indigenous cultures and religions. The imposition of Persian and Arabic as languages of administration and culture further exemplified this cultural imperialism. The Islamic conquests in India were a period of upheaval that reshaped the subcontinent's historical trajectory. The forced conversions, slavery, and cultural erosion experienced during this time had lasting impacts on the socio-religious fabric of India. While the Islamic rulers introduced new architectural, artistic, and scholarly traditions, the legacy of their rule is also marked by the struggles and resistance of the indigenous populations against religious coercion and cultural subjugation. This complex legacy continues to influence the cultural and religious landscape of India to this day. In the 7th century, the Islamic world was on the move. The Umayyad and later the Abbasid caliphates embarked on expeditions that would forever change the landscape of Africa. As they reached North Africa, a new chapter in the continent's history was being written, one of conquest, conversion, and cultural transformation. Unlike the conquests in India, the Islamic expansion into Africa was characterized by a blend of military incursions, trade relations, and the gradual spread of Islamic culture through the Sahara and along the East African coast. This complex interplay led to both the rise of Islamic states in Africa and the transformation of its indigenous societies. The timeline of Islamic conquests in Africa is marked by several key phases. 7th–8th centuries, North Africa is conquered by the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates. 11th century, the Almoravids, a Berber Muslim dynasty, begin their expansion, influencing much of northwest Africa. 13th to 16th centuries, the Mali and Songhai empires in West Africa embrace Islam, becoming powerful Islamic states in the region. 19th century, the Fulani Jihad establishes the Sokoto Caliphate in West Africa, marking one of the last significant expansions of Islam through conquest in Africa. Several African empires and kingdoms were subjected to Islamic rule or influence through conquest or alliance. The Almoravid and Almohad movements in North Africa exerted significant influence over the Western Sahara and the Senegambia region. In East Africa, the spread of Islam was more gradual, with trading connections leading to the establishment of Islamic sultanates along the coast. In West Africa, the Mali and Songhai empires emerged as monumental states, flourishing under Islamic rule. These empires became synonymous with wealth, with Mali's king Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca in the 14th century being a testament to their prosperity. His journey, adorned with gold, highlighted the immense riches and Islamic devotion of the Mali Empire. The expansion wasn't without resistance. Skirmishes and battles marked the Sahel and Sahara as Islamic forces encountered indigenous African kingdoms. Forced conversion played a vital role in the spread of Islam in Africa. In many areas, the adoption of Islam by African societies was a gradual process influenced by trade and intermarriage with Muslims. However, in regions such as Sudan and parts of what is now Nigeria, military campaigns led by Islamic states resulted in the forced conversion of indigenous populations. The Fulani Jihad in the early 19th century, led by Usman Dan Fodio, established a vast Islamic empire in the Sahel, significantly altering the religious landscape of West Africa through coercion and the imposition of Islamic law. Yet, over time, many regions embraced Islam, integrating it into their societal fabric, altering forever the cultural and religious landscapes of these mighty empires. With Islam came not just a religion, but a cultural revolution. Cities like Timbuktu in the Songhai Empire blossomed into centers of learning and commerce, attracting scholars from across the Islamic world. However, this cultural exchange was a double-edged sword. As Islamic laws and customs took root, many indigenous practices were sidelined or absorbed, leading to the erosion of traditional African religions, languages, and customs. The spread of Islam in Africa often led to the marginalization of indigenous religions and customs. In North Africa, the Berber populations saw their traditional beliefs being slowly replaced by Islamic practices. Similarly, in the East African coast and the Swahili city-states, the adoption of Islam by ruling elites led to a gradual erosion of pre-Islamic cultural practices. Islamic law and governance systems replaced indigenous institutions, leading to significant cultural transformations. The shadow of slavery loomed large. Both the Mali and Songhai empires participated in the trans-Saharan slave trade, a grim enterprise that saw thousands of Africans forced into bondage. Slavery was a pervasive aspect of African societies before and after the arrival of Islam. However, the expansion of Islamic rule into Africa facilitated and expanded the trans-Saharan slave trade. Islamic traders exported slaves from sub-Saharan Africa to North Africa, the Middle East, and even parts of the Mediterranean world. This trade had a devastating impact on African societies, leading to the depopulation of certain areas and the entrenchment of slavery as an economic institution within Islamic states in Africa. The interaction between Arab and African societies was marked by both cooperation and conflict. While Arabs and Berbers played a significant role in the spread of Islam in Africa, they sometimes held prejudiced views towards sub-Saharan Africans, which were reflected in the slave trade and cultural interactions. However, over time, the intermingling of Arab, Berber, and African societies contributed to the rich mosaic of cultures found in Islamic Africa today. Yet, figures like Mansa Musa of Mali and Askia Muhammad of Songhai stand tall in history, not just as Muslim kings but as African icons. They navigated their empires through times of change, balancing Islamic influences with their African roots. Under their rule, the empires reached unparalleled heights, even as they grappled with the complexities of Islamic colonization, including forced conversions and the struggle to maintain African identities. The Islamic conquests and the spread of Islam profoundly shaped Africa, from altering its religious and cultural landscape to influencing its political and social structures. While the introduction of Islam led to the development of great civilizations and centers of learning, it also resulted in significant challenges, including forced conversions and the entrenchment of slavery. The legacy of Islam in Africa is a testament to the continent's capacity for cultural synthesis and adaptation, even as it grapples with the complexities of its historical encounters. As we delve deeper into the historical saga of Islam's spread through India and Africa, it's essential to recognize the stories of resistance and resilience that emerged in the face of conquest and cultural transformation. Across these vast lands, many communities and leaders stood firm, defending their traditions, beliefs, and territories against the tide of Islamic expansion. In the heart of Africa, amidst the waves of Islamic conquests and cultural shifts, stood formidable tribal leaders and societies that resisted the imposition of Islam. Their resistance was not merely a defense of territory, but a fierce preservation of their cultural identity and religious beliefs. Among the lush landscapes and arid deserts, these leaders rallied their people, sometimes engaging in battle, other times using diplomacy to maintain their way of life in the face of expanding Islamic states. These acts of defiance, though often overshadowed by the grand narratives of empires, are pivotal chapters in Africa's rich history, showcasing the continent's diversity and the resilience of its peoples. Turning to the Indian subcontinent, the Maratha Empire stands out as a beacon of resistance against Islamic rule. Emerging in the 17th century, the Maratha Confederacy became a formidable force under the leadership of Shivaji Maharaj, who ingeniously employed guerrilla warfare tactics to challenge the Mughal hegemony. The Marathas' fierce resistance and strategic acumen not only contained the spread of Islamic rule, but eventually laid the foundations for one of the most powerful Hindu empires in India's history. Their relentless pursuit of autonomy and preservation of Hindu culture and social structures significantly countered Islamic influence in the region, leaving a lasting legacy of resilience and national pride. In the southern part of India, the resistance against Islamic expansion was equally pronounced. The powerful kingdoms of South India, including the Vijayanagara Empire and later the kingdoms of Mysore, Travancore, and others, played a pivotal role in preventing the complete Islamic colonization of the Indian subcontinent. These kingdoms were not only military powerhouses, but also centers of Hindu and Jain culture, art, and learning. Their successful resistance was partly due to the robust military capabilities and strategic alliances they formed, including some with northern Indian powers, which were engaged in their struggles against Islamic rule. This synergy of resistance across the region showcased a collective endeavor to preserve the cultural and religious diversity of the Indian subcontinent against a backdrop of relentless conquest attempts. If you enjoyed this journey through the untold historical saga of resistance and resilience in the face of Islamic colonization in India and Africa, and appreciate the depth and diversity of our world's history, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful content.